The views and opinions expressed on Real Talk with Horace Sheffield are not those of WADL TV 38 or Adele Broadcasting Corporation.
Giving you talk, real talk. Take a walk down this path through Detroit. This is real talk, real issues straight from the heart. Giving you real talk, real talk. Take a walk down this path through Detroit. This is real talk, real talk. Real talk, Take a walk down this path through Detroit. This is real talk, real issues straight from the heart. Giving you.
Welcome to another edition of Real Talk. I'm Reverend Horace Sheffield III. She is Deanna Solomon, and of course, our illustrious city clerk, Janice Winfrey's here. This is a part of an ongoing series called Detroit, Its Fate and Its Future. I want to acknowledge, by the way, the presence of Deion Williams for the mayor's office. The mayor's still sick. We're praying for him, and we certainly appreciate anybody that steps up and do anything, because they sure will talk about you, won't they? Yeah. But listen, what I've been saying to people is that all the stuff that we're dealing with, we could change if we simply got out and vote.
Absolutely.
There are enough people in Detroit, Pontiac, Flint, Grand Rapids, across this state that we can send our governor back to making computers.
That's right.
That's
right. And you cannot express the importance of voting enough to our citizens and people at large.
Right.
Just, I don't know where it comes from, this whole notion that my vote doesn't count, but you can see that your vote counts by what's going on in the city of Detroit. You asked me the impact of voting. Well, when I shared that with my staff, one person said to me, "Take a deep breath, Mrs. Winfrey. The Clean Air Act." Absolutely. The very right to vote is so important.
Sure.
And now we're faced with these huge budget cuts. I think people don't realize this is a democracy.
Right.
And voting is not an option.
Yeah.
It's what we must do. And there's no way that Department of Elections will allow for the disenfranchisement of our people because of budget cuts. We are mandated by the U.S. Constitution. Voting is not an afterthought. It's a right.
It's the very fabric of our country. Ms. Solomon?
Well, Clerk Winfrey, we are excited to have you here today, and we know that we've engaged your office on numerous times just to educate and inform not only the Dabo members but just the city of Detroit at large. Can you tell us? I know that with recent changes with upcoming school closings and with past school closings, I was speaking to some of your staff, and they talked about the new voter registration cards, and there's a timeline there that we hope to bring you back to talk about once that date hits. Tell us what kind of changes we can expect moving forward over the next couple of months.
In terms of polling locations?
It's in terms of polling locations, right. And polling locations, and anything we need to do as citizens to be prepared to vote during the primary.
One thing that our citizens need to do, and I find that we're not doing enough of, is reading the mail that comes from the Department of Elections. That's official mail, and it needs to be read. Yes. Because of the results of the census, every Detroit voter will receive a new voter registration card. That's an important piece, because many of us will have new polling locations. There is a new political composition on your card. In other words, you'll be in a new congressional district. You'll have a council district now. Yes. You'll have police commissioners. It's very important that you read your mail from the Department of Elections. Yep. Another thing you can expect is we are right-sizing city government in the Department of Elections, and as such, we're down to 490 polling locations now. So individuals need to look at their voter registration card, their new one that they'll receive in May, to determine where they go and vote. The other thing they need to look for the Election Connection newsletter and read it, because it contains all the information that they will need for that upcoming election. And again, it also indicates on the Election Connection newsletter where you go and vote on Election Day.
So does the newsletter go to all Detroit citizens or just registered voters?
It goes to registered voters in the city of Detroit.
Okay.
I get calls all the time, people from Southfield, Redford. We didn't get a newsletter. You don't live in my city. I service the city of Detroit.
Right.
Okay. And just one more question on the new voter registration card. You said it should include all of the districts that we're now located in.
Yes,
so
that's
congressional, you said city council,
all
state,
of your political
state
composition,
representative.
everything that you vote for will be on your voter registration card as it is now. It's called a political composition.
Right.
Yes.
You'll see all of your various districts and so forth.
So you know who to vote for.
So you know who to vote
Okay,
for.
now here's my question, and I'm sure you've done some research, and I read the article in the paper where you were, genuinely upset about the potential of losing money, which could affect our president, and we certainly needs to get him reelected. But to what degree does this consent decree affect your operation? I mean, voting is a federal privilege. I mean, do you have any ability to trump this or to make certain that you fulfill your mandate?
As it reads now, I'm not in it much.
Okay.
But of course, with the budget cuts, they're saying to me that you must conduct elections at half the cost, and it's impossible. It's not nearly impossible. It is impossible. We are mandated by law, so we shall do what we have to do in order to conduct elections.
I have
in
an
the city of
alternative proposition. Let's line us up on all these streets and let the governor and Republicans come count us. Okay, and that sounds strange, but let them come without the state police, let them come without any personal protection, and let's advertise they're going to be there at midnight at Mac and Bewick. Now, I'm non-violent. I'm simply saying this. These people so far removed from us, and they absolutely aren't even concerned about it. So here's my question again, and we've talked about it. We've got a program called Connect the Dots, and the Lord gave me this, really. And because I hear people talk about all this kind of stuff, about voting doesn't matter, but I'd be willing to bet you every single thing they're complaining about, if you traced it back, after you get rid of their own personal responsibility, you find somebody sitting in some desk somewhere that other folks voted for that now are dictating their life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right. And we got to connect the dots, and then we got to erase some of them.
Yep. So based on connecting and erasing, the next step is actually getting people out to vote. So what are the initiatives for 2012 to try it again? Try it again.
We only have 30 seconds, so.
We only have 30 seconds.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have you back, though, real soon.
Okay.
But give us the phone number for people if they want to get information about registering to vote and where they can get more information about their districts and everything.
Okay. An individual can call 313-876-0190.
One more time.
That's 313-876-0190.
Okay.
Okay. And if they don't want you to have all the money, tell them we're going to only spend that money on Democratic primaries, and we will not count any votes of Republicans. All right? We'll be right back after this with more guests.
Detroit, this is real talk, real issues straight from the heart.
Welcome to Real Talk with Reverend Sheffield. You're watching WADL TV, and we're here. Joining us today, we have Attorney Helen Moore, and we have President Al Garrett of ASME, and Reverend Sheffield.
Absolutely. Glad to be your guest today.
We're actually moving into part 2 on our series on the fate and the future of the city of Detroit. And we have 2 individuals here that are engaged and committed to not only the past, but definitely Detroit's future. And now that we're in the present and we have a consent agreement on the table, I'll start with ladies first. Ms. Moore, what is your current involvement, and what do you foresee the future?
Well, I've been involved with the school system over 40 years.
Yes.
And we started off with the emergency manager law, financial manager law. We sat in court for weeks and weeks. And the day that we won the case, the state came in and said, it's okay, you won the case, but we changed the law. And I've been angry ever since.
Okay.
And then I passed the word down to the city that they were going to do you the same way that they did the Detroit public schools. And they have done that. And this consent agreement is flawed. It is not going to help us anyway. All it does is help them, the corporations and the people who are trying to control our lives, just like they did with the public school system.
So
it has not worked.
What's our way out?
Our way out is to keep fighting and never fight. Remember what Harriet Tubman said?
Okay.
If they only knew, I could have saved more slaves if they only knew they were slaves. And that's what's happening in this system.
It's an interesting thing about this is that it has tended to bring us together. Helen and I have not always been on the same side of issues, but I know that she believes very fiercely about what is right and wrong for her city, and that's what's got to bring us together. Now, El, I had your vice president on my show Saturday, my radio show, and I said to him the most egregious thing for me, because I grew up in trade union home, it appears to me that there's a whole nother agenda. Now, you got everything you wanted, and then you want to come back and say, well, we don't want that agreement that the union made to stand, and we ought to go further and actually erode and eliminate some of the basic principles that are gained through collective bargaining, like seniority and the right to outsource. I mean, it almost seems to me like the real agenda here is the bust the unions.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if bust the union is the right phraseology, but it's certainly to neuter unions. Is to say that the influence that a union brings to the workplace ought to be minimized. I mean, if you stop and think of what Snyder and Dillon said, they wanted the economic adjustments we gave. Those were fine. But then they were worried about the application of seniority. Now, you think about it. If there's a person to be laid off, all seniority does is determine who's laid off.
Right.
Economically, there's one less person working.
Right.
But they want to change that provision of the contract. Similarly, the question of fair days work for fair days pay. If they wanted to eliminate a person could work out of class forever. When I say out of class, he could be working in a higher title and not compensated. Mind you, they just put out that they want to pay the CFO and the CEO and the project manager somewhere like $250,000. Why don't they work out of class and not be compensated for their dollars? Right. They rather do that. They rather do that to, as you folks say in the church, the least of these.
Right.
And so they're extracting a pound of flesh from the workers, and at the same time they argue that for the skill sets these other folks have, they got to make $250,000 in order to do their job.
Well, let me just say one thing about what you said. You said they want to pay. The reality is the state ain't paying them nothing.
Exactly.
They want us to pay
that's right. That's
out of our money.
Right.
So
exactly.
So what's the real benefit? What do we really get
They
from
benefit.
the state?
They benefit.
I forgot the most important thing. Please.
Yes.
I had to call Ms. Solomon. I was on the radio last Sunday's paper. Here comes the state to help save the city.
Right.
And then they had all these white churches, not 125 white churches, not one of them was black.
Sure, no.
I mean, the whole thing was like, all right, white folks are here now.
Yeah.
It's got to get better.
Yeah, right.
I mean, come on. I mean, I'm sorry.
Can I remind you of our history? Go all the way back to Native Indian treaties. We're going to give you all this stuff, and they still working for it in casinos. Yeah. Remind us of the 40 acres and a mule. Yeah. We are not fools anymore, and they only benefit from all the things they do to us. That's what's happening. Yeah. Everybody's getting paid but our children and us.
I think that there's no question that there's legitimacy in our anger. There's legitimacy in our protests, our litigation, and all of that. Sure, but I think there has to be a conversation among black folk on how do we now position ourselves to deal with this new reality until the court vindicates us or the signatures vindicate us or until something else happens to intervene. But think about it. There are projects coming online that says there are dollars to be made in this town, and who do we access to make sure that what is being made and used in the city benefits folks in the city. And so It's time for all the backdoor dealing that goes on, all the conversations that are tucked away in the corner, that we set a main table of stakeholders to really talk about. Guess what? If you're getting rid of Mustersky, black folk, people who live in the city, got to profit from it. The city's got to profit from it. And there's projects, be it the rail going down Woodward. Now, understand, I'm still angry, but I'm saying while we're in this fight, we still got to make sure that while we're fighting, they don't sell the store on us.
Well,
and so we got to deal with that.
I got you. But Ms. Salmon got you. But see, there are two critical issues, and Ms. Salmon's going to ask a question. Two critical issues. One is that we have all these black faces in white spaces. In other words, we have people who legitimately buy what it is that's being sold by the governor and think that this reconfiguration of power and authority is going to benefit them. No, once they get done having what they want to have, they're going to say, see ya later.
That's right. What they always
The second thing that bothers me about all of this is that I get so tired of hearing black folk talk about how bad Detroit is. If Detroit is that bad, why are Japanese moving here? Why is Quicken Loans buying everything he can buy?
Right.
You know, I got it. My son wrote a song, I'm loving not leaving Detroit. He said, I'm not leaving the city that made us, even though the way they talk about us is outrageous. I'm loving not leaving Detroit. And that's what we got to do. We got to tell these folks we ain't going nowhere. We ain't. We're going to get our votes together.
Yep, you're right.
And we're going to make certain we're together. Yes. We ain't got to all march the same beat, but we got to be going the same direction.
That's right.
We do have to be going the same direction. So how, I have two questions. One is, I come from a union household, and it's imperative that our youth, one of our greatest assets here in the city of Detroit and beyond, know the importance behind the youth movement, what you're doing now, how they've been able to live better lives because of you. How do we get that message out?
Well, one of the things.
You know what? Let's take a break. We'll do one more segment with you two. I know I told you one segment, but we're in your house. We're in Garrett's house, and so we're going to get Garrett some more time. And this lovely little here. We'll be right back after this.
Take a walk down this path through Detroit. This is real talk, real issues.
Welcome back to Real Talk. We're here at Ashby at 600 West Lafayette. What a beautiful building, beautiful auditorium. We wanted to lend our voice and our program to this struggle to make certain that we are not put under someone else's foot and our neck stepped on, and then we're asked to smile about it. Now, Ms. Solomon asked a good question. Let's start with you, Helen, about, what do we need to do to make that happen?
The children, the students are getting involved. I'm working with Frederick Douglass, walked out the other day, got suspended, Denby walked out, been over to Mumford. Look, the students are not as dumb as they think they are. These are brilliant students, and they know what they want and what they need. They have been neglected by this emergency manager bill and all the people that are in there that don't know what they're doing. The children that are in the public schools now have been neglected. There have been thousands of suspensions and expulsions. I'm working on a case now from Western where this child has a 3.5 point average, and she was suspended, and she's to graduate in 2 months. I'm going crazy trying to talk to all these people to get this child back in school so she can graduate. These are the things that are happening now. Frederick Douglass, they walked out because they had no math teachers, no education. Everything was going wrong for them. So the students stood up. I said, let's have a sit-in. The student said, okay, Ms. Moore, we're going to walk out. I walk right with them. The students are leading, and they are doing what they're supposed to do in the city.
So the youth in Detroit are feeling the impact.
Oh, listen,
they're feeling the impact, so they know.
It's going to be some changes made, because we're going to make sure that we make, along with the students and along with their parents and all the other people that are supporting our city and our schools.
Isn't that the most ironic thing, though? You look at what happened with DPS, with an emergency manager.
Yes.
And how any rational person
can say
that that's a recipe to use for the city of Detroit. Just bottles the mind.
Well, you know what? They're trying to keep the story out. They don't want none of us with the truth. thank God for this program. They don't want the truth out, and they're doing everything to make sure that some of us don't tell the truth. The truth is it failed, and the people that came in should be ashamed of themselves. They shouldn't even accept any money, because now they got emergency manager Roy Roberts making over $250. Then they got Doug Ross coming in over the charter schools and all, and they got Dr. Covington, and all of them are making salaries while our kids suffer no books into classrooms over. This ain't right. And we need to stop it.
Now, I wrote something, and I wanted to bring this up while you're here. Both of you can comment on about my friend, my brother Malik Shabazz, and who stood up and said, you know, we're going to burn it down. And of course, he said to me later, I should have said that some other folks might burn it down. He wasn't going to do it personally, but in 1967, in November at the Randor Hotel, my dad and some other African Americans met with J.L. Hudson. And J.L. Hudson came to that meeting and said that the reason the riots happened, we've been talking to the wrong Negro people. And my father said, you've been talking to the wrong Negro people, you just ain't been listening.
That's right, that's right.
Now, I just wanted to bring it up and see how you all feel. I think people don't understand the degree of despair, the degree of hostility that is simmering, and it's almost at the surface.
But you know, there is a slight difference. As bad as it was in '67, it wasn't the same kind of economic suppression that's in this city today.
Right.
And so I don't know if the EM coming to the city of Detroit will be that spark, but we've got to get folks up and moving, okay? Because right now, the kind of resistance that we have, it's pocketed.
Right.
And there's enough issues in the city of Detroit that there ought to be a universal uprising. And I'm not talking about burning the house.
You said up and what now? I want you to borrow your phrase, because see, one of the things I got in a lot of trouble, the Bing administration called me down. I was on TV all over the world because I said this whole idea of shrinking in Detroit was nothing but poor cleansing. See, all this stuff that's going on with the schools and going on with this is designed to move some of you poor folk off the land.
Sure enough, sure enough.
And that's what it's all about. And to do that, you know, number one, they got to challenge the authority because they don't have the ability to access the land. That's the real issue there. If you got a consent decree and other folk running the city, they can do whatever they want with the land.
That's what they're doing.
Absolutely.
That's exactly what they're doing.
So how can we help?
Well,
what can we do?
I think the first step is these kind of programs.
Sure.
That there ought to be some more discussion, and then we need to set a table with stakeholders and actually talk about what's coming down the pike and start devising a plan on how Detroiters get engaged in getting part of that pie, okay? And I'm not talking as a business person, but I'm saying if we're creating jobs in Detroit and economics in Detroit, then my members are going to be okay because there's a tax flow. You follow?
Right.
And so part of it is they're coming with the rail. Well, doggone it, what's the piece for the city of Detroit? Not just the rail going down, but who's manufacturing that rail, who's distributing that rail, where is it warehouse? Those are dollars and job opportunities. And so every project, there's an opportunity. There ought to be a spinoff in terms of redeveloping the city.
Yeah, but I agree with you. The problem we have, though, is you've not created the kind of critical mass that could coerce these people. You go back to Buddy Battle and all them folks.
Yeah,
they
that's what I'm saying.
They demanded.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and they organized to the point where they had everybody pulling behind.
Think about, that's what we did, but think about what it was. We created a vacuum when the old leaders left. And we never filled it. What was filled with was Pookie doing his deal, Jeffro doing his deal, and so we got all these splinter groups that are being co-opted in terms of the good of the community, out cutting their own deal. Now the fact of the matter is, ain't nobody getting paid, okay? And I'm saying that table ought to be about, guess what? The guy who think he has an in with the hospitals need to be at the table. The guy who thinks he has an in with the chamber need to be at the table. We need to talk about how do we do things for this city as opposed to
And I agree, but the only part of that puzzle you left out, going back to TULC, because I was raised in there. Buddy, Ted Morgan, my dad, Joe Davis, they get the folk in the room who were not a part of the plan, who tried to co-opt and spanked them.
They sure did.
They wouldn't come out their house.
That's right.
They wouldn't go to work the next day because they knew there was a price to pay.
And I guess that's what I'm saying. But guess what? It's us once developing a common cause that we all come, and the spanking's there.
Right.
That, yeah, there's no question that you're not going to have folks being honorable and not jaywalking.
Right.
We've got to figure out what a sanction is, and then be willing to impose it.
Warning,
Be it election,
warning,
being elected or
warning.
whatever.
We need to deal with some of these sellouts that are going along with the program.
That's what I'm saying. I didn't call them sellouts.
All right, look.
Well,
This is what we
deal
got to do.
with it.
This is the last one. What we got to do, though, is have enough of our own that they ain't got to go ask nobody for nothing.
That's right.
They can get enough from us to be satisfied and not turn coat. All right, we got to end this show right now. We got a whole nother show next week, but we thank you for coming here, ask me, and being a part of our